On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very exciting treat. She's a dynamic nurse practitioner, an intermediate fasting and nutrition expert, a two-time TEDx speaker, author, and host of the Everyday Wellness podcast, No Big Deal. She leads numerous specialty fasting programs and has been featured on ABC, Fox 5, CW, Entrepreneur, and the Megyn Kelly Show, just to name a few. She's also the author of her incredible book, Intermittent Fasting Transformation, and her ability to make health and wellness information easily digestible is second to none, no pun intended. She's here to teach you how to live your healthiest life, and she's just a juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific mother and wife. Please welcome the abundant, wise, and resilient, the beautiful and brilliant, charismatic Cynthia Thurlow. How you doing, Cynthia?
I'm doing great, Craig. I've been looking forward to connecting with you.
Yeah, and at some point we had to cut the chit chat beforehand. We're like, we got to say stuff to the show. We were really connecting, vibing, having a great conversation. For my community and listeners, I couldn't be more excited about this one. In case you guys aren't familiar, my best suggestion would be do a deep dive, play catch up, check out her awesome content, her great podcast, her book, all the things. What I think is most valuable today is we just have an unbelievable conversation. Before we dive in, we're going to get a little weird. You ready for me?
Sure.
What is your superpower?
Oh, my ability to connect with people on a very kind of deep level. I think this is something that was evident when I was working as a nurse practitioner, because I could walk into a room and I could intuitively understand what that patient needed and how I needed to be able to serve in whatever capacity they needed. And I mean this in a professional way, but sometimes people needed me to let them talk about their family. Sometimes people needed to talk about their concerns. But that is my superpower, is the ability to connect with others.
I think that's fantastic. And I think it's twofold, because not only were you actually helping people in that capacity, but also your personal brand has exploded. And I think one of the reasons why is because of your ability to really connect with people, make them feel seen, and they're obviously gravitating towards your message in that sense as well.
Thank you. I received that.
Hell yeah. I want to ask you one more fun one and then we'll dive in. I'm just curious. Every day when you wake up, for you personally, what are some non-negotiables for you?
Oh, absolutely. I don't get on social media when I wake up. So number one is like being very deliberate with what I bring into my life. I would say number one, it's gratitude journaling. I would say number two is exercise. Total non-negotiable. My whole family knows if I don't get my exercise in the morning, I'm completely grumpy. We go through an exercise with our dogs. So we have two doodles, and every morning we get walks outside in nature with them. Right now it's been raining nonstop for 5 days in Virginia, but normally it's anywhere from 2 to 4 miles a day. And so for me, it's getting outside, connecting with my husband. We walk the dogs, we make fun of them, and they make fun of us. But those are part of that's kind of how I start my day. I think for someone that for so many years had to be in the hospital, rounding on patients at 7:30 in the morning or starting clinic early, to be able to get up in the morning and not be like rushing and jumping on social media and getting irritated and texting my team and like all the things I could be doing. I have the first 2 hours are very protected, and that's usually what they're filled with. Exercise. Sometimes that's exercising from home. Sometimes it's exercising at the gym. Just making sure whatever I'm surrounding myself by is either taking my business or my mindset to another level, including some days I will listen to Audible. Like I may just set aside 30 minutes to listen to a book. I could listen to a podcast, but I think personal development is so important, and starting my day in the right mindset and that connection to nature and exercise is really an investment in myself, and making sure that I'm doing everything I can to show up as my best self in my business or for my family.
I mean, could you and I be any more aligned? Like, where do I begin to unpack that stuff? First of all, let's start with the beginning. I love that you set a boundary, or maybe it's a standard for yourself. Pick your poison in regards to not getting in, the craziness of social media just yet. And then also exercise for me too. I mean, 7 days a week, I'm traveling a lot now, speaking. Sometimes I can't get it in. But if I can, 7 days a week, and it's not even for the physical component like it used to be, like look great. Obviously, that's, a byproduct. That's fantastic. But just the mental and connect. Like when I'm running, that's how I connect and get the best downloads. And then the third thing that caught my attention was you take the puppies out. My fiance and I, we just got a puppy, and he's the cutest thing ever. He's also a bit of a menace, but it's a full-time job. It's definitely, I think it's going to be good practice for the kiddos. Maybe you could confirm, but it's we take him out, and sometimes we just like he's so weird. It's so much fun, and just practicing mindfulness in those moments so important. Something that I used to not do. It's something that I'm really working on now, and it really makes it such a beautiful experience.
Yeah. And it's interesting. My very first business coach used to say to me, Cynthia, I want you to cultivate time in the morning for you. And I was like, I don't understand. I'm used to being in scrubs and in the hospital by 7:30 in the morning. I'm lucky if I can empty my bladder or even eat during the day. And she said, you're now an entrepreneur and you need to set things in motion and you decide for yourself. It could be that you meditate or you do yoga, whatever it is. Set a time that you start your day. And I laugh now because I really struggled in the very beginning, not scheduling things at 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning. And now my day starts at 11. Like I'm up early, but there's a bunch of things I have to get done before I start showing up in my business. And that has made all the difference because when I show up at 11 o'clock in the morning or 10, depending on the day, I'm 100% ready. But if you try to get me at 7:30 in the morning before I got my rituals done, I would not be in the right mindset. I would not be ready to serve my community. I would be irritated. And I think that's been such a powerful awareness to acknowledge that for each one of us, finding rituals in our day that allow us to show up as the best version of ourselves.
So good, so relatable. Yes. And I'm just curious, what time do you typically wake up?
Oh, it depends on the day. Usually by 6, 7 o'clock at the latest. I do allow myself to just sleep without an alarm clock several days a week because I think that's important.
Yeah.
But I also make sure I'm in bed early enough so that my sleep time is pretty protected. I really thrive on 8 hours of sleep, which may make some people laugh, but I'm at the stage of life where sleep is really important to me. And so I'll put myself to bed early. I have teenagers and more often than not, they'll stay up late with my husband if they're watching a movie or they're doing something. But most days of the week, I try to be protective of that sleep time.
You use that word a couple times so far, and I think it's so beautiful. Protective,
Mhm.
right? Like I protect my energy for the life of me. And now that I'm evolving and I'm growing, and that's a never-ending journey, like that means saying no to a lot of things, right? So you can protect that. And it seems like you do as well. And I couldn't agree more, like the habits, the rituals, like I'm a very specific morning routine as well. And it's non-negotiable, right? So that, and it's kind of long. I could probably shorten it a little bit if I'm being honest, but because it's long, I wake up earlier to get that done so that I can start the day. But if I don't get that in for whatever reason, I'm not myself, and then I'm not showing up as the best version of me, and multiple people suffer for that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as I have evolved as an entrepreneur, I've realized that I have to be flexible. So as an example, both my boys have been intermittently, one was at Duke for 2 weeks, now another is at Duke, and we've had to go back and forth. And it's not that long of a drive, but it's time out of your day and time out of your schedule. And I was saying to my husband that for me, like missing out on that morning workout because we had to be up early in the car, I was like trying to figure out where to fit it in during the day because the acknowledgement of being so sedentary for 5 hours in the car, twice in 2 days, just made me realize that, for me, that mental awareness of how important physical activity is for me, just not being sedentary. And obviously, you're in a car, you only have so many options.
Mm.
But understanding that just being flexible with yourself, I think is also important. Like I couldn't be rigid all the time. If I was, it would make it challenging to be able to pivot when you need to.
I absolutely love it. And I'm just curious, going backwards for a second, because you mentioned working out every day. Do you, and I know you talk about this, so I think this will be really helpful for the audience. Do you work out in a fasting state?
I do. And it has, sorry,
It's okay.
can you hear the dog?
No, but
Oh,
it's real, raw, and authentic, and I have one too. All good.
sorry. We had our cleaners at the house and they were crated and they hate being crated. And that's why they're
Cynthia,
barking.
you're probably gonna hear my puppy at some point. Let her rock. Let her rock.
For me, yes, I always work out in a fasted state because I exercise in the morning. And for me, there's just no value for me personally to eat before I exercise. I've always been this way. Even before I did intermittent fasting, I would go to the gym fasted. And it's just where I feel like my body is not focused on digesting food. It's focused on fueling my workout, staying alert, doing whatever, whether I'm lifting or I'm doing high intensity interval training, or if I'm taking a yoga class, it's just how I exercise best. I know that that can be controversial, especially for women, but for me, it's always really worked out well and it has not hampered my ability to exercise.
Oh, this is good. And I imagine a lot of people listening right now, they're not so, and we've had guests on that do similar things, but not the same. Some of them are really like grabbing the journal right now and trying to take notes so they incorporate some of this stuff. I'm curious, do you have a deadline on when you eat last before you go to bed?
Personally, I do better ending my feeding window earlier in the day. So for me, I may break my fast at 10 a.m. and I may eat dinner at 5. Now, it's because of the pandemic that I started to realize when I did not have the ability to be, or my kids weren't going to 15 different activities and sports. And I normally from, 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 8 o'clock at night, I was driving people around. So I could never eat when I really wanted to. During the pandemic, I realized, you know what, I actually do better eating earlier in the afternoon. So having dinner by 5 or 6 o'clock at night and then going to bed at 9 or 10. For me, that 3 hour window is really important in terms of like feeling good when I go to sleep. I don't feel good if I go to bed with a full stomach. I don't feel good at all. It impacts my Oura ring data. It impacts my blood sugar. I mean, for me, it is all about being, again, super protective of my sleep. And so for me, I just do a whole lot better eating, like ending that feeding window earlier in the day rather than later.
Yeah, talk about divine timing. I needed to hear this because, as you know, like we're still relatively in the early stages. Only been a little less than 3 years building the brand. It's exploding, and we're hiring and growing and scaling. But obviously, I'm super selective, and intentional with hiring and so forth. So I'm wearing probably a little bit more hats than I'd like to admit right now. And so I have some long days, and I love them. Just to be clear, I'm not depleted because I love this stuff, but I am tired in the day, and sometimes I eat really late and at that point I just go right to sleep. And I've noticed, like, even in the morning, not only my workout, but I just feel different, sluggish, and not my best self. And I imagine you would know this better than I, but like my body's probably working so hard to try to burn that stuff off, and it's just not good, not productive. I need to figure something out to optimize. If I'm going to be working late, maybe I need to create some time to eat in between a meeting or something like that. I need to be better at that.
Yeah, because when you understand that we have these clocks, so it's not just we have a super charismatic clock in our brain that is kind of fueling, taking in cues from our environment, whether it's light or darkness, whether melatonin or cortisol are being secreted, but we also have melatonin clocks in our gut. So when you eat a large bolus of food, an hour or two before bed, it's going to suppress melatonin secretion. And melatonin is one of these key hormones that helps us, prepare for sleep. It'll actually increase cortisol because your body's trying to process a bolus of food. And when cortisol goes up, blood sugar correspondingly goes up and insulin will go up. And so it's not at all surprising that you're noticing that your sleep quality is kind of eroded. You're not feeling as clear cognitively. And a lot of it could have also something to do with what you choose to eat. So if you're having couple glasses of wine and you sit down and have a big bowl of pasta or like a trying to think of like big pizza. I'm trying to think of things in New York that are popular. A big piece of pizza, you'd have a pie and you're wondering why you wake up in the morning, you're like, God, I feel like crap.
Yeah.
It can, a lot of times, if you sit down and have a steak and maybe a broccoli, you're probably going to fare a whole lot better than if you eat a very carbohydrate laden meal.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, and I'm going to prove with that 100%. And also, like, even my workout the next morning, like if I wake up early and go for a run, I feel like instead of maybe like burning straight fat, my body's like burning the meal that's like still there that didn't really digest the night before.
Yeah, it definitely can play a role. And I think the fact that you make that association that when I eat too close to bedtime, this is how I feel and this is how my workout suffers the next day, that's a really powerful connection to make.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely love it. You mentioned wine there. I'm curious, do you entertain? Do you drink at all?
I don't drink. I've never had a drinking problem per se, but during the pandemic, I realized, I drank just socially. And I was like, it's the one thing that really erodes my sleep. And I'm so protective of my sleep that I was like, hey, it's not worth it for me to get terrible sleep. We know what sleep does or what alcohol does to your sleep quality. We know what it does to your blood sugar. And for me, it's a non-negotiable. And so, there's no judgment if people do choose to drink. I just think that if you know that your sleep quality is diminished by consuming alcohol, and again, I'm a nerd. I like to track data. So I've got an Oura ring. I can track all these metrics. And all of a sudden my deep sleep plummets. I'm like, not worth it.
Totally understand. Yeah, you have to weigh like the consequences in life. it's a short-term fun, and then you wake up the next day maybe not feeling your best self. Is that really worth it?
Right, right. And I think, I would say if people are choosing to drink alcohol, just being conscientious that, don't drink on an empty stomach. Alcohol gets processed first by your body. So it's processed as a toxin. So if you're sitting down and having 5 beers and have a bunch of pizza, you're probably going to store most of your pizza as fat. So just to kind of be cognizant of it. But if you're going to have it with a meal, have it with real food. That will definitely help, support your body.
I love it. This is so valuable. I was checking out your content yesterday, as I suggest the entire audience to immediately follow this show. And I saw something that you posted yesterday that was pretty cool, and I wanted to bring it up. And it was a Ralph Waldo quote. And I love that. Tell us why that one was important for you.
Well, I kind of curate content as I go through my life, and my team knows this. Like if I find something that I like, they know I put it in a folder, and I'm like, have at it. I think for me, so much of the work that I do is really mindset related, whether it's speaking in front of an audience, talking on the podcast, talking to clients, talking to patients. It's helping them understand that they do have control over a lot of what goes on in our lifestyle. And so, to me, inspiring quotes is definitely aligned with my business, and certainly aligned with, sharing across social media. I think social media in many ways can be inspiring and wonderful, but I think there can be equally destructive. And so to me, sharing positive, inspiring content is something that is important to do, because there's plenty of negativity that's out there. There's plenty of accounts and individuals that do the exact opposite. And I'm like, life's too short. I think if we've learned nothing over the past 3 years, that, staying focused on your purpose and being in the right frame of mind and being surrounded by the right people really makes a big difference.
I couldn't agree more. And as I think one of the reasons why a lot of people connect is because I'm like posting stuff as I go through life. Obviously, like I'm strategic and when I post stuff, but for the most part, like I like to share it. I think that's how people connect. But I wanted to answer the quote that you posted specifically. I believe it was the only person you are destined to become is the one you decide to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love for you to unpack that. Obviously, you posted because it hit home for you. For anyone listening right now, how important is that? Because I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I mean, it's acknowledging that we make choices. I just finished another podcast, and interestingly enough, a lot like your podcast, there's a lot of mindset involved in it. And I like to tell people that, through adversity comes opportunity. And that's how I've really lived my life. And so I don't even think I knew for sure when I became an entrepreneur what direction I was going in. But now retrospectively, I can look back and say every decision I made was pointing me in the direction of where I am today. So I choose to show up as a positive, inspiring, thoughtful, high integrity entrepreneur. I choose to educate, inspire, and empower women to live their best lives. And so for me, it's showing up not just as an example to others, but also living in full alignment with my purpose. And so when I think about, we choose the direction we go, and it really is a choice. Things don't per se just happen. I think they're designed to be that way. And we can either look at it as an opportunity, or we can look at it as adversity. And so, we're constantly invited to show up as who we are and be as purposeful as we are designed to be.
I mean, could you be on any more fire right now? This is great. And a word that you mentioned, which is huge for me right now when I teach and coach in my community, is the word alignment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of people ask me like, how have I done what we've done in a relatively short amount of time, building personal brand? And what I say is it doesn't take time. It just takes alignment. And it took me 35 years, but once I finally found it, it's like the seas begin to part and things feel not necessarily easy, because obviously there's still work and stuff like that. But there's a quote that I used to hear: when you find what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's cute, but I want to add a remix. And that's when you find what you love, you'll never feel like you're working, right? Because you love this stuff, but obviously there's still work. And a lot of it has to do with the way I see it is being in alignment, like when your soul is lit, right?
Yeah.
And I have contrast because I spent a long time in a miserable frequency doing stuff that I was not aligned with. When did you know? Like how was it for you to step into what you're doing now, like all in, and this was alignment for you?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you when I wasn't in alignment as a starting point, I worked for a very large cardiology group in Washington, D.C. And it became evident to me that writing prescriptions was not helping my patients. I mean, I was practicing evidence-based medicine, but we weren't fixing the root cause. And so for me, that pivot in 2016, when I left clinical medicine and became an entrepreneur, my husband thought I was crazy. I mean, he never said that, but it was clear that he thought I was crazy. And I kept saying, I know that I can make a bigger impact not being in a typical clinical medical environment. When I came into full alignment was in 2019. I would say, thinking about the fact that in 2018, I wanted to do a TED Talk because I'm an introvert. I know that surprises people. I was an
Same,
introvert. Yeah.
same.
Yeah. And so for me, it was like, what's a big, scary goal? And so my husband was like, is this about your ego? And I was like, no. And so I did my first and I accepted my second. And right before my second TED Talk, I got very sick. I spent 13 days in the hospital. I almost died. And during my hospitalization, the two things that were super clear to me, number one, I wanted to get home to my kids and my husband. Number two, I needed to do this talk. So 27 days after I left the hospital, I did that talk with the sole intention of showing my kids I was okay. Okay. So 10 days later, I go and get my appendix removed. And I say to my kids, gosh, guys, this whole summer, we're just going to totally unplug. We're going to have this great summer. And that's when my business exploded. When you talk about alignment, I tell people all the time, no one would have ever questioned for me if I had chosen not to do that second TED Talk. Everyone would have said, oh, you spent 13 days in the hospital, you lost 15 pounds, you were so sick. And for me, there was this opportunity. I don't know what it was, God, the universe, to show up. And
Mm.
I showed up, and I tell everyone, like, I don't know how. I just know that when I was in full alignment at that moment, the universe had given me this incredible opportunity to show up as myself. And that led to so many blessings. And every day I show up with the same intention. Sometimes I kind of still look back in bewilderment. But as an example, that talk went viral. I joined a mastermind that fall. It was the most I'd ever invested in my business. I was terrified, terrible imposter syndrome. The following year, I got a multi-six-figure book deal, which is unusual for a first-time author. I wrote that book in 2021. The book came out. I mean, it's been like one thing after another. And it was like, what really showed up for me was when I left that hospital, and I set that intention that I'm still going to do this talk with no other focus than showing my kids I was okay. And so how many people show up in their business or show up in their occupation with different intentions? I want to be viral. I want to be famous. I want to make money. And I'm telling you, when you are living in your soul purpose, things come into your zone. Like we were talking before we started recording in 2019, my podcast co-host said, this isn't in alignment. This isn't what I want to do anymore. And I said to you, the pandemic started, and I said, sink or swim. And I said, I reached out to some really big names in the health and wellness space, and all these people said yes. And I started to realize that I was actually a good interviewer. And so I went down that path. And so there's just been, when I have shown up in my business the way I'm supposed to, wonderful things and blessings have come. So, you know, the TED Talk, the book, which I was so proud of because I'm such an introvert, and my parents had conditioned me to believe that I'm a healer. I'm someone who's in service to others. I'm never going to make money. And I remember I've never been more proud of something that I've done. Then I went through this big book auction, 7 publishing houses vying for the rights for my book, 3 separate auctions. And I cried when we solidified like who I was going to sign with. And I said to my mom, I never realized I was capable of doing something like this. And it was just that feeling of like, wow, like this is the most impactful thing I've ever done, other than, you know, choosing who I married and my boys. And so from there, it was, you know, like the book, and then, you know, all these opportunities that have come about. And so I feel like for myself, the pandemic and being an entrepreneur have allowed me to become in full alignment. Like when people have reached out to have me on podcasts, I'm like, this is someone that I've like had on a vision board for 5 years. And I'm actually sitting in front of them and I'm talking to them and I'm like, oh my God. So when we're in full alignment, what that really represents for me is we're serving in our true purpose. And, you know, sometimes even to the best of us, we have what I refer to as energy leaks. Sometimes it can be you're so focused on what you're doing in your business, and maybe there's someone that does something similar to you, and you just catch for a moment what they're doing. And for just one brief moment, you feel a little less than, and that's an energy leak. And I'm like, okay, let's get grounded again, because I'm not comparing myself to anyone else. I'm doing something completely unique. I'm a unique individual. I'm serving people in a unique way. It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. I just need to be focused and committed to what my purpose is. And so for me, it's been incredibly humbling. But I feel like when I'm in 100% alignment, the most amazing things happen. And it's not hokey. It's not, my engineer husband sometimes is like, okay, she's in alignment. And I'm like, no, when I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, when I'm talking to exactly the people I'm supposed to be talking to, that's when beautiful things happen.
I have like a dopamine hit right now. No, I swear to you, that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard.
Oh,
And
thank
that's
you.
why these conversations are so special, because that was straight off the cuff, because we were going back and forth and I just felt called to ask you that. And I can relate so deeply. And I've never heard that articulated like that. And that was
Thank
like a
you.
monster breakthrough for me, because people ask me like, how will these opportunities come to you? And a lot of the opportunities that have come, like the book deal also, I didn't even have a lit agent, and they just Wiley, and people are like, how? And it's like, when you're in alignment, sometimes you don't have to worry about the how, right? And I know that's been said before and it's a little cliche, but it's an energy. You're a vibrational match for great stuff to happen. And the only way that that stuff does happen is when you're in alignment, and you're minimizing those energy leaks. And it's like, sometimes so many people come to me and they're like, but tell me how to do it. Tell me what to do next. What's step one? And I'm like, but are you available right
Yeah.
now? Right. And are you doing it for the right reasons? And I don't want to work with people now. I'm very selective, that want to do it just to make money and stuff like that. I'm not interested in that. When you really want to add value and do it for the right reasons, ironically, the money is the byproduct and energetic exchange. Like, for me, I'm making more money now than I ever made on Wall Street, but that was not the intention.
Right.
But the way you just described that stuff was so beautiful and so relatable.
Yeah. And it's funny because obviously, let's be frank, nurse practitioners, they work very hard. They don't make a lot of money. I mean, let's be totally, they don't make the kind of money they should make. Let's be clear.
Agreed.
I remember I was talking to a nurse practitioner friend of mine, because now a lot of nurse practitioners look at me and they're like, I aspire to do what you're doing. How do you get there? And I remember saying, well, one of the biggest issues you're going to have to work through is your money mindset. And I'll never forget the first time I had a 6-figure month. I mean, I made 6 figures, like low 6 figures. Let me be clear, like $100,000 for an NP is a good salary. Let me be clear, depending on where you work and what environment you work in. And I just remember when I had a 6-figure month, and I said to my husband, holy, can I curse?
Yes.
Holy fucking shit. I was like, oh my God. And like as an example, I grew up at the Jersey Shore, and I had parents that, I lived in a very blue collar part of Jersey, and I have wonderful friends and wonderful memories of my time there. But there are times when I connect with old friends and I can't talk about these things, but I'll just say to my kids, you know, there are so many opportunities that I am allowed to participate in and you're allowed to benefit from because of the work that I'm doing. And I just kind of humbly sit back and I'm like, wow, wow, wow. But it's one of those things where you have to be in the right mindset to receive. You have to be in the right mindset to receive. I just started a new business venture at the latter part of 2022, and my 17-year-old had started driving, and because my husband and I both work from home, we were letting him alternate picking one of our cars to drive every day. And then it became apparent this arrangement was no longer working, because occasionally, sometimes my husband and I would both need to be places at the same time. And so I remember saying to my husband, we need a third family car because said older son is not going to get his own car. And so we started looking and looking, and he had some preferences, and I thought his preferences were reasonable. And I remember saying to my husband, I think what we need to do is take my car. We'll take whatever my car is worth now, because it was like a 9-year-old car. We'll put that towards a third family car, and then whatever the rest of it is, I'll cover. And my son and the three of us ended up buying a car, the third family car, as I keep referring to it. And it ended up being a little bit more expensive. And that month, I'm not kidding, that month, my dividends from this other business venture were exactly the difference in the cost of the car. And I said to my husband, I got it. And I wrote out a check to the dealership and drove away with the car. And my older son was like, oh my God. And I said, yeah. And I said, no coincidences. So you have to be in alignment to be in acceptance of money. And I think many people don't like to talk about money. It seems gauche. I was raised like, you don't talk about money. It's very gauche. It's not appropriate.
Oh, yeah.
And I tell my kids all the time, that's BS. There's no shame in talking. Like, I talk openly with my kids. Like, my CPA is very much legally where he should be, but like, we very aggressively do things within my business to lower my tax burden within the framework of the law. Let me be clear. And so I was putting money into one of the kids' savings accounts as a starting point. And I explained to them, if you go into your savings account, you'll see there's more money than what was there before. And so my older son was like, but where's that coming from? And I was like, trying to explain to him that, this money mindset is we make money, and then we're smart about what we do with our money. And so explaining to him, like, because you're under the age of 18, this is how much legally I can put in an account for you because you're working in my business. And we were having this discussion. And I was saying, we have to change the way we think about money. And I want you and your brother to grow up talking about money and feeling comfortable talking about money in a way that's empowering, not in a way to be showy or to be greedy, but just to talk about it openly, because there's a lot of family members that have issues around money. Like, they're either very scarcity minded about it, or they don't respect the money and they spend too much. And I said, there has to be a happy medium. You save some, you spend some, you invest some. And so I think that for me, it's been like really cool to be, someone who was taught at a young age that I'm going to be in service to others. I'm not going to, quote unquote, make money, to be in a position where I do make money. And I think it's amazing and wonderful and exciting. And yet, by the same token, how many people are uncomfortable with women in particular talking about a money mindset? I don't know why it's so kind of gender biased, but my mom again the other day was like, not a lot of people are comfortable talking about money. I was like, no, I think you're not comfortable talking about money. I'm comfortable talking about money. I want people around me to feel comfortable talking about money, because we're talking about it in the context of something very purposeful, not, oh, I want to go out and buy like a 10,000 square foot house or something crazy like that, which I have no interest in buying, cleaning, furnishing, etc.
This is so juicy and so good. And I can totally relate. Like, my parents are the best. They're a little bit older. They had me a little bit later. I have an older brother, my best friend. But they, look, they did the best that they could. But when I was growing up, like, the environment that I was in was like, yeah, don't put things out there. It's superstitious. Now I'm all about setting the intention. But I had to have awareness of how I was brought up and then change it. And one of the things also that had to make big changes was with the money mindset, for sure. Not only is it taboo to talk about, but like creating wealth and having a lot of money and stuff like that, like, that's for other people.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is. It's an energetic exchange for adding value and serving.
Yep.
And I imagine you didn't have that agenda with the book deal.
No.
Yeah.
I was totally like, when I tell you I was so naive, they're like, oh, your book's going to go to auction. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that is. And then I just kind of showed up, and then numbers were thrown out. And I remember being like, holy fucking shit.
Yeah.
That was exactly how I felt. And, I sit in complete gratitude, because again, if I hadn't done that talk, if I hadn't shown up, that probably wouldn't have come to fruition. And so I think half of our challenges is just showing up in our lives and understanding that, many of us just miss opportunities that are otherwise there. We're either disengaged, not paying attention, not showing up. That's just not the way I lead my life.
Yeah, I love all this, and I want to land the plane with something about the fasting stuff, because I know a lot of people look at you for that and want to give some guidance. But this entrepreneurship, I could tell it lights you up. And you said a couple of years back, when you really hit your stride, or leaning in, you made a big investment that was uncomfortable at the time. You took some uncomfortable action, put yourself in a mastermind, stuff like that. And I used to be the same way, and now I'm so big on investing in myself and my growth that I find it exciting, where I used to be like, oh my God, like, well, I'm setting this person this much money. But how important is for you investing in yourself and your expansion and your growth and stuff like that?
Oh, so important. I mean, I was in that big mastermind for 3 years, and then last fall decided that I needed to do something different. And so I ended up hiring a part-time CIO who's really like a big business coach. And that was an investment. And that's how you have to view it. You can't like look at the number and go, oh my God, so much money. Nope. You're investing in yourself. How do you think I've gotten to where I am? It is not from playing small.
Ooh,
You
playing
know, I have,
canceled.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I have a Reiki energy coach. I mean, I have a lot of people that I pay money to that allow me to show up purposefully in my business and my personal and professional life. And they're, resources. Like when I feel like I have an energy leak, I'm like, shit, I need to connect with so and so because they're gonna say and do the things that are gonna help me like get my mindset back in the right frame of mind. So I think irrespective of where you are in your business journey, you have to invest in your mindset and your business. And you have to look at it as an investment. I tell people all the time, when I invested in that mastermind, it ended up being a 6-figure sum of money over 3 years. You better believe I've gotten more than that, and it's way more than that out of that investment. And I think sometimes I'm surprised. I have a coaching program, and everyone has the option to pay for a business coaching. Not all of them take me up on it. And then in monthly calls, they'll express concerns and fears, and I'm like, if you, whether you business coach with me or someone else, you need to coach with someone. Like, I don't care who you choose to pick, but you have to make that investment. If you're scarcity mindset and you're like, I can't make the investment because it's too expensive, that's not the right mindset. If you want to get forward, and especially for me, like, I didn't have a business background. I'm a clinician. I'm a clinician. And so for me, it was really important to play catch up. I was like, I don't have an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't have a business degree, but I can tell you now, I could probably teach an MBA program, but because I've learned so much, because I've made those investments. And I think for anyone, again, irrespective of where you are in your business, you always need someone that's going to be coaching you, even if it's just mindset. Like my, part-time CIO is amazing. And a lot of what we talk about is mindset. He sends me books to read, and I try to make sure I stay on top of them. But a lot of the mistakes that we make as entrepreneurs is getting fixated on a number when you understand that that should then take you to another level. Like that investment, whether it's with a business coach or mastermind, et cetera, you invest in like you do Joe Dispenza's weekend retreat or whatever it is you're doing. I mean, you're just continuously leveling up the people that you're exposed to, the energetic frequency, the alignment of people you're exposed to. Like I recently experienced kind of a weird thing. I was on social media, and my team had posted something, and there were a couple people who attacked me that I thought were friends. And my team was like, how do you want us to respond? And I said, delete their comments. And they're like, you don't want us to say anything. I was like, nope. And then these individuals were in my DMs, DMing me. And I stopped responding. I said, we are not in energetic alignment. And then I pulled this person's podcast out, my lineup, pulled it out completely. And I called my podcast team. I explained the situation. I told my team, if these people message, we don't respond. And normally I'm not someone who recommends that you ignore people, but I kept reminding myself, I am not in energetic alignment with these individuals. They're not in energetic alignment to be on my podcast.
I love that, because first of all, energetic alignment, just together, those two words flow nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And kudos to you for like I remember I was speaking to Gabby Reese once on my podcast, and she said something like this, and always stood out to me. Something like entanglement is acknowledgement, something like that, right? As soon as
Yeah.
you give it, like if you give it any attention, you make it real.
Yep.
Then like
Yep.
they're winning. Like
Correct.
I'm not interested. I'm not available for that.
Nope.
Yeah.
I think there's a time and a place. Like if you have a personal issue with someone, there's a time and a place to have an appropriate conversation. If
Mhm.
you're going to vomit all over my social media and you think that that is somehow going to endear me to you, nope, that's not how I operate.
Yeah.
Which is not to suggest I'm not open to disagreeing about things. It's just the
Yeah.
way that you go about doing it.
Sometimes it's healthy, a difference of opinions. Yeah, but the right environment and so forth. And I just love all of this. And also I want to acknowledge you, like you're changing your family's like mindset and like paradigm on how you guys view money and stuff like that. And I think that's really special and encouraging the kids. And even like the conversation you said you had with your mom, like, no, you might not feel comfortable about it, but I'm starting something different with this family tree. And that's just, it doesn't mean I'm right, you're wrong. This is just how I'm doing it.
Yep. Well, and it's interesting because my parents are divorced. So my dad and my mom had very different relationships with money.
Mm.
And my mom was incredibly successful. And my dad was, more of like scarcity mindset. Whatever he had, he kind of whittled away. And so I always said to my husband, I think you have to find a healthy balance and it's different for everybody. But I find more often than not, people are uncomfortable talking about money. It makes them uncomfortable, whether it's they feel less than or they've got unresolved money issues. But I feel like money is just energetic currency. It's not as much like this tangible thing. It's just understanding that like just like I was reminding my husband, we're doing a backyard project, and we're on this tight timeline with a good sized budget, and I remember saying, I'm not worried, things are going to fall into place. And of course, my husband's an engineer, and for him, he likes things to be super tangible. And I just said it's going to fall into place, and he's like, okay, that it's going to fall into place. But I think it's for each one of us. It's like some people are more risk averse, some people are less risk averse, some people will talk about money, others won't talk about money. But I don't think it should be taboo to help educate people about their money mindset. I think that's really important.
I love it, 100%. Can I ask you a weird question?
Sure.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
51.
51 years young and just getting warmed up. I only asked because you said your kid's age and you're
Yeah.
doing really right because you could probably pass for 37.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I do live what I preach. So when I talk to people, I always say, I think when I was in my 40s, I was always like, oh my God, I hate telling my people my age. And now I love telling people my age because it shows people what is possible. Like you don't turn 50 and turn into a toad if you don't want to.
What the hell is
So
your skincare routine?
well, I think well, let's be honest. I think some of it's genetics. My mom has beautiful skin. Um, I think a lot of it is, I don't eat a crappy diet. I intermittent fast. Once a year, I get perfractional, which is a laser that gives me a couple days downtime. I stay out of the sun. But I think a lot of it is, it's the lifestyle stuff that we do that
Yeah.
has so much to do with what our skin looks like. Like I look at friends of mine. I mean, I grew up in Jersey in the 80s and, everyone was in tanning beds. And sometimes when I see friends I went to high school with, I'm like, some people look great and then other people don't. And I think it's so much a reflection of how, what do you do for yourself? Do you sleep? Do you manage your stress? Do you eat a garbage diet? I mean, that can impact things a lot.
Yeah. Love that. We'll land the plane with this. What are you most excited about right now? Obviously, you have a lot of things going on. How can I know my community is in full love with you in 2 seconds? If they wanted to get involved and work with you, how do they do that? And then I just wanted to ask you one question after that in regards to the book.
Yeah. So I would say the thing I'm most excited about in my business right now, I have a new supplement launch that is coming out in about 2 weeks called Alpha GPC. It's all about brain, cognition, energy. It's kind of like a cup of coffee without the jitters. But if people want to check me out, check out a program, check out YouTube, the podcast, probably my website's the easiest place to go to. So www.cynthiathurlow.com. You can check out my book, Intermittent Fasting Transformation. You can check out the podcast, Everyday Wellness. I'm growing on YouTube. I'm active on Instagram and Twitter. Be forewarned, I am snarky. And then I have a free Facebook group called Intermittent Fasting Lifestyle that's for men and women. that's on Facebook that you are more than welcome to join. That's probably the easiest way to connect with me.
Okay. I love it all. We'll put it all in the show notes. Aren't these the best types of conversations? Like I tried to, the way I do it is like, I don't want to ask you all the stuff that you get asked all the time because it's annoying, if I'm being honest. And I want to encourage people to play catch up and check out all the things that you have going on. But we can't end and not mention the book. For anyone that is obviously going to want to grab your book right now, what can they expect from it?
Yeah, so it's obviously a book that talks about women and fasting, what makes us unique, irrespective of what life stage you're in. So if you're still 35 and under peak fertile years, you're perimenopause or menopause, this book is for you. And I actually have some men that buy it because they just follow the menopause plan. Talks about hormones, talks about, not just hormones that are unique to women, but all the hormones, leptin, ghrelin, cortisol, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, talks about how to go about intermittent fasting. It literally walks you through day by day how to go about doing it. It has challenges inside. I have an amazing friend who's also a chef that actually lives in New York City. She's in Brooklyn, Beth Lipton. She made 50 amazing recipes that are focused on protein. I'm all about the protein and the right types of carbs. And so it's just a very structured plan to be able to implement intermittent fasting and to do it from a place of integrity. It's science-backed, it's research-backed, but it's designed to be accessible for everyone. So it's not a book that's per se designed to be a clinical book, but clinicians can read it and the lay public can read it and get a lot out of it.
All right. That's who we dropped the mic. You're such a bad. It's so dynamic, and I'm excited for everyone to grab that. We'll obviously put that in the show notes too. You have so many cool things going on. It's so exciting, and to be honest with you, it's fun to watch. And I know that you're just getting warmed up. Why? Because of what you talked about earlier, how you're in alignment, you're available, and sometimes the best opportunities aren't even the ones that we see coming.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, this was awesome. Cynthia, hang out for 1 sec. I just want to connect with you after.
Yep.
I want you to know you the definition of being in alignment, abundance, and authentic energy. I can personally guarantee your best yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings and leaving your mark on this world. So much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets today.
Thanks, Craig.
That was great.
Thank you. No, that was, you have great energy.
Thank you. And I feel the same. To be honest with you, there's a lot of alignment, and some of the things I really did feel high. Like the way you describe being in alignment is how I feel. And sometimes it's hard to describe, but you nailed it.
Oh, thank you. Well, sometimes, living with all men in my house, sometimes they're like, mom's talking about alignment again. I'm like, guys, I'm telling you, like even down to, Jack getting this, he wanted a Jeep. And I was like, oh, I don't want to buy a Jeep. And so it was like, we narrowed it down, went to all these different dealerships, ended up buying this one car. And my husband was like green. He's like, I don't want to spend all this money. And I was like, listen, I showed him, I was like, I just got this deposit from my supplement line. And it was exactly the cost of the car.
Yeah.
I was like, so it's like I sneezed. That's how easy it was.
Yeah. Not a coincidence. I know that.
No, totally. And so I remember telling my mom was like, oh, your dad and I couldn't do those things for you and your brother. And I'm like, Mom, it's okay. I'm just like so proud that I can do this for my kids.
100%. Let's stay connected.
Absolutely. I would love that. And you mentioned your book is coming out. When does it publish?
August 15th.
Okay. Yeah, let's stay in touch because if there's, any way that I can help support your book launch, I'm happy to do so.
I would love that. And I'll message you on Instagram also. I know you said you have a team that runs it, but we could stay connected there.
Well, I differentiate, like I have one that they know, like anything that's in like the general column, they answer. Anything that's on the personal side, I answer. So.
Okay. I'd love to do many more things. And I think there's many ways we could support each other. Do you ever come out to New York?
I do on occasion. I was out there multiple times last fall, but yeah.
Okay. If our schedules ever permit, I'd love to grab a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love that.
Can we exchange numbers?
Sure. Here, I'll just put it in